The nation continues to remember former Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg. She reshaped the legal system and was known for her dissents in cases involving abortion, civil rights, voting rights, and pay discrimination against women. She served for 27 years and was only the second woman appointed to the Supreme Court. Let's bring in Samuel Issacharoff. He's a professor of constitutional law at New York University's School of Law. Samuel, thank you for joining us again. Tell our viewers why Justice Ginsburg was so well liked, even by people who opposed her ideologies.
Well, I think there was a moral decency at the heart of her entire legal career. She was somebody who, unlike most of the Supreme Court justices now, made a career in shaping the law before she was appointed to the Supreme Court. And she brought that authority with her to the court. She was a lawyer's lawyer in the sense that many of her rulings that don't get public fanfare were highly technical, exacting, demanding claims on the legal profession. But what really drew her apart was the urgency of her convictions and her faith that the law could be transformative.
Which key cases do you think will define Justice Ginsburg's time on the Supreme Court?
Well, I think that the ones that will be most remembered are the ones that fit into a profile of her and her self-identification as an advocate. So the decision involving the exclusion of women from the Virginia Military Institute, the decisions involving, or the dissents involving pay discrimination, and perhaps most notably, her dissent in the Shelby County voting rights case, which was her most full-throated, I think, cri de coeur. It was really a claim that the nation was betraying, or the court was betraying, the nation's legacy of achievement.
And how does Ginsburg's death now change the dynamics within the Supreme Court? And how will that change how cases are decided?
Well, oddly, the court has moved to the right. And so Justice Ginsburg was less of a power broker at the end of her tenure on the court, simply because she was too much to the left of where the center of the court had gone. In recent years, this has been the court of Chief Justice Roberts since Anthony Kennedy's retirement in particular. And so she was mostly a voice in opposition. She did not form the coalitions. The most influential justice from the liberal bloc is probably Justice Lana. And the effect of a replacement, if it is done by President Trump and if it is somebody who is deeply conservative, will be to move the center further to the right, meaning that Chief Justice Roberts will no longer be what's called the median justice, and it will be somebody to the right of him.
Let's look ahead to the new Supreme Court term. There are some cases that are already on the docket that could be affected by the loss of Ginsburg. Can you tell our viewers about those?
Well, the main issue before the court right now is cases that they haven't yet taken, cases involving the election potentially in November, cases that go to the heart of questions of presidential power. And on those, she was a very strong voice for holding the administration accountable, for maintaining separation of powers between the branches. And the fear is that if somebody who is more deferential to the executive is put in, we will have a more president-heavy jurisprudence in years to come. I think that's the big concern. I know that the social issues are always present, and so one is concerned about the future of Roe versus Wade. One is concerned about the extent of some of the civil rights acts. But I think the big issue, and the one that is most distressing for those of us who are concerned about constitutional boundaries, is what will happen with the scope of presidential power.
Reportedly, Ruth Bader Ginsburg's dying wish was that her position wouldn't be filled until the next president was seated. As you mentioned, it's possible that we could see legal challenges over the election end up at the Supreme Court. I also spoke with another guest who said that it's quite possible that a lame duck session of Congress might be the one that confirms her replacement. What do you think all of that would mean in terms of how this country functions?
Well, there used to be a higher degree of consensus about Supreme Court appointments in two senses. One is who was appointed to the Supreme Court, and second, the process by which it was done. Under Senator McConnell, there's been a push through that the filibuster no longer holds on Supreme Court appointments, and the minority party has very little say. So we don't have a lot of background for this. We've had recess appointments to the Supreme Court. I believe there have been 3 in American history, so that there have been justices appointed who took office without even going through Senate confirmation at the time. But if Senator McConnell pushes this through, I think that it will be a declaration that all boundaries are gone. And the retaliation may very well be that if the Democrats win the presidency and the Senate, that there will be an expansion of the size of the Supreme Court. It will be very hard to maintain the view among Democrats that 2 of the seats were not stolen under those circumstances. And there is nothing in the Constitution which prohibits the increase of number of justices to 11 or 13, and that way unwind the supposed permanence of McConnell's games.
I think that will be I think what you've just said will be really surprising for some of our viewers. What would it take, actually, to increase the number of seats? I think maybe President Roosevelt had previously tried to do so, but that is well beyond our norms in government. How would that be able to happen?
Well, the size of the Supreme Court is set by statute, and we've had different numbers of justices historically. We've had as few as 6 and as many as 9. We've sort of settled on 9 for most of the past century, or more than past century. The Roosevelt plan was simply to pass a statute to increase the size of the court when he couldn't get the New Deal passed. It was seen as such a radical step that it was voted down. It did not get approved by a democratically controlled Congress. And many historians are of the view that Roosevelt's attempt to go after the Supreme Court as an institution was the end of the New Deal, was the end of his capacity to really legislate at the national level. That said, I think that the notion that Merrick Garland never got a hearing on the pretext that a lame duck shouldn't appoint a lifetime justice, and then if it's turned around and a justice's appointment is pushed through on the eve of the election, we're really 7 weeks out from the election, that would be an extraordinary turnaround. And I think that might give a strong Democratic Senate, if there is one, and a Democratic president, if there is one, the political and moral authority to push that through. But it just takes. I just want to give a hat tip.
Yeah, so I just wanted to give a hat tip to my high school history teacher. I can't believe that I remembered that moment in American history with Roosevelt. Samuel Issacharoff, thank you.
It's a pleasure.